references, whether it's the minutiae of presenting quantitative information, whether you use n dash, whether you use a colon, whatever. Despite everything that you do in the business of getting research papers published, I must say that there is an element of chance. So that is why I often think that getting a paper published in a good journal, in a high impact factor journal, is a game of snakes and ladders. So what would be a snake? Obviously one major snake could be a reviewer. Let's say your paper lands on a reviewer's desk. When the reviewer is, in a foul mood or something else, or it's just that the reviewer has had some enmity with your research guide, because although reviewing is supposed to be anonymous, at times, it doesn't quite happen that way. Maybe the nature of your subject, the venue, people can put two and two together and find out what's your affiliation is. Or a ladder could be that your paper lands on the editor's desk when the editors are in fact looking for more papers on that particular topic. Maybe they're planning a special issue, or even more mechanical terms, when I'm talking here of printed issues. So you know that something, because of the technicalities of printing, the number of pages has to be typically a multiple of 8 or 16, because so many pages are printed in one go. So if the editor is running short of, let's say, 4 pages, because unless those 4 pages are filled, the issue cannot go to press, and your paper just fills that slot. So that's a ladder. But what I'm going to talk about is how do you eliminate, or at least how do you reduce the chances of encountering snakes, and how do you increase the chances of encountering ladders, or what I mentioned to you early on, that if you put into practice what I'm going to share with you, or what I have already shared with you, the chances that your paper will be what we call desk rejected, that is rejected without being sent out for review, the chances of that happening will be far too low. I mean, we can help you in that. So this long journey, and it is a long journey, believe me, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. It begins from choosing the right journal for your research. Now realize that by the time you have come to the stage where you are writing up about your research, so here I'm assuming that you have your manuscript practically ready. So you have the title, you have the abstract, and so on. Maybe you want to put some finishing touches. That's a different matter. We'll come to that later on. So by the time you reach this stage, that you have already written up a manuscript, so in draft form, almost all your work is complete, because you conducted the research, you collected the data, you analyzed the data, you figured out the implications of those data, you did some review of literature, and you actually sat down and wrote a paper. All that remains is for the paper to be published, which is a very small part of the efforts that you are putting in. So don't give up at this stage. You're almost near the finishing line, and the care that you bestow on your manuscript at this stage can really make a difference. And that's why I said we should start from choosing the right journal. Later on, I'll come to avoiding the wrong journal. But first, let us see how do you go about choosing the right journal, because the choice is so wide. Even the mainstream publishers, whether it's Elsevier, whether it's Springer, whether it's Wiley, whether it's Taylor and Francis, each of them publishes somewhere between 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,000 journals. So you have to find the right choice. Besides that, of course, there are so many other journals published by professional societies, published by other publishers, and so on. So how do you start? Well, the simple thing is to use Google Scholar. So what you should do is, I'm assuming that your draft is ready. So you have the title for your paper and the abstract of your paper. So copy the title of your paper and paste it into Google Scholar. And then examine the results that you get to see which journals occur more frequently in that list. So the assumption being, because your title indicates the contents And if these journals have published papers with similar content, then you stand a good chance. So there's likely to be a good fit between what you have to offer and what the journal is looking for. So that's a handy way of doing it. Just use Google Scholar, paste the title of your paper, and scan the list for journals that occur more frequently. So that's one way of doing it. The second thing, and we just talked about citations and references. So look at the list of references you have appended to your paper. And again, see if there are some journals that stand out because they occur more frequently. Again, the chances are that there will be a good match because you have thought it fit to refer to or cite papers published in those journals. It's very likely that, again, there is a good match between your contents and what the journal has been publishing. You could also go about it in a little more systematic way, and there are a number of websites that make this possible. Essentially, how it works is that you go onto the web page. I'll give you the URLs in a minute, and there's a window for the title of your paper, and there's a window for the abstract of your paper. So you paste the title in the slot that's provided, you paste the abstract in the slot that's provided, and you click find journal or select journal or choose journal, whatever. Then what the web page does, it's the web page runs some kind of algorithm, analyzing the contents that you have provided, that is the title and the abstract of your paper, and comes up with a list of 3, 4, 5 journals that, based on the algorithm, it considers suitable for your manuscript. Now that choice is constrained by different things. Now, for instance, if you use Manuscript Matcher, which is run by the Web of Science, the same people who assign impact factors, the same people who publish journal citation reports. So this website will suggest only those journals that are covered by the Web of Science. So that's the filter, that's the constraint. Likewise, there is Open Journal Matcher. Works the same way. You paste the title and the abstract of your paper, but here it will only suggest those journals that are open access. So that's the filter. Then different publishers, whether it's Wiley, whether it's Springer, whether it's Elsevier, all have this service. And of course, the constraint here is they will suggest only those journals that are published by the publisher in question. So if you visit Journal Finder of Elsevier, then it will only suggest Elsevier journals. But yes, it's a good choice. So you could use one or more of these approaches and select a journal. But once you select a journal, your homework is not yet over. As I kept mentioning in previous session, once you choose a journal, 2 things you must do. You must study the instruction to authors provided by that journal. Now, I will warn you upfront that these instruction to authors are trivial, they're boring, they have very little to do with the scientific content of your paper. So you have to wear a different hat when you are putting final touches to your paper, when you are preparing your paper for publication. So study instruction to authors, but they are often not complete. So you supplement them by examining a recent issue of your target journal, the journal that you have shortlisted, and see how the journal handles the more mechanical details. And I will come to that in a moment, what these mechanical details are. Like yesterday, when we talked about tables, I mentioned to you that you can print the word table in capital letters, in lowercase letters, in bold, in italics, whatever. So again, examine how that journal is treating references, is treating citations, is treating reference figures, tables, and so on, and prepare your paper accordingly. So as I said, you could use Google Scholar, you could use Manuscript Matcher. Of course, this entails that you register yourself. There's no cost involved, but you need to register. Or you could use Open Journal Matcher. The same thing. You enter the abstract or the title or both. Wiley has Journal Finder. So once you paste the title here and the abstract, and then you say find matching journals, it will suggest journals, of course, in this case, published by Wiley. Likewise, Springer, same thing. You supply the title and the text, and you will find somewhere out of these 2,500 journals that Springer publishes, or Elsevier has the same thing. So you could use any of these means. Now, assuming that you find a suitable journal and then you give the finishing touches, which I will explain in a moment, but you find your paper is rejected. Many times it is rejected even without review. Now, one of the reasons could be, I mentioned to you in the previous session, the journal is very picky about its references. So there are 7 most frequent reasons why manuscripts are often rejected. Now, as I said, first is the mismatch with the scope and aims of the journal. So if journals are in their instruction to authors or in their about page, they make this clear what sort of manuscripts they are looking for, what kind of manuscripts that they don't publish, and so on. So if you have done due diligence, if you have been careful about choosing the right journal, then your paper is unlikely to be rejected on this ground. So that's one of the 7 reasons. The next 3 reasons have to do with the substance of your paper and ethical misconduct. Now, again, this is more of an issue in biomedical fields, not so much an issue in, even then, there are concerns. For instance, let's say that you have developed some algorithm to study faces and identify the race. Well, it could be there could be ethical issues involved, whatever. But there are 3 other reasons, and all of them are avoidable. So for instance, your manuscript is poorly organized, if it contains simple errors of spelling, grammar, punctuation, and so on. And if you are ignoring the journal's instruction to authors, then that is never a good idea. So I will focus on the last 3 and tell you how you should prepare your manuscript for a target journal. And as I said, remember that it's a marathon. It takes a long time. In this survey, it showed that it took anywhere between 6 months to 2 years for bulk of the paper submitted to journals. So 30 and 37%. So more than 2/3 of the paper fitted in this time span. So what you should do about this, and you should know why it takes so long, because this is just the beginning of the journey, that you send or upload your manuscript. Then there's a preliminary screening, what I call a qualifying round. The purpose of that qualifying round is to decide whether your paper is worth sending out for a review. Because see, the reviewer's time is also precious. Journal editors don't want to load reviewers with too many submissions. And this is where we often, because we are not prepared, we don't take adequate care in preparing our manuscript, that we often find that our paper is rejected. So let it not happen to you. So let's say that you clear this qualifying round, your paper gets sent to the reviewers. Then the reviewers are referees, same thing. They will focus on the technical content of your paper, not so much on presentation, although they will be influenced by your language and the way it's prepared. But yes, they're expected to focus more on the technical content of that. So then they will get back to the journal's editor saying that, we have examined, these are our comments. And the editor then gets back to you that, look, these are your paper has been reviewed. These are the reviewer's comments. Now, at that stage, there could be one of the 3 things. Either the journal editor will say, yes, your paper has been reviewed and we are happy to publish it, which of course virtually never happens. It doesn't happen so smoothly. Or the journal editor will say that, yes, we have had your paper reviewed. Unfortunately, we cannot accept it. Well, you can always submit it to some other journal, but as a result of that journal's review, that journal has declined your paper. That doesn't mean that's the end of the game. In fact, you have to you submit it to some other journal. Or in many cases, if you are there's a good match between the journal's policies and your contents, and if you have prepared your paper carefully and if the reviewer found something worthwhile, then they would say that, look, these are the reviewer's comments, these are the reviewer's concern. So please send us a revised paper in which you have considered the reviewer's comments and revise your paper accordingly. Now here there's one thing you need to keep in mind, that when the reviewer send you when the journal editor sends you the reviewer's comments, it doesn't mean that you have to agree to everything what they say. That may not happen. You may have genuine reasons to contest some of their recommendations. Journal editors also know that. So your job is to convince the journal's editor that you have addressed every comment, you have addressed every concern expressed by the reviewers. Sometimes in the light of that, you may have revised your manuscript. Sometimes you have chosen not to revise it, but you defend your choice that, look, these are the reasons, and which is fine. So let's say you do that, then you submit a revised version, and then it is typeset. It begins to look more and more like a finished product. For instance, now when you submit a manuscript, it will be typically a word processed file, but the journal may publish its page layout may call for multiple columns and so on, particular font, whatever. And then you get a proof to correct, just to make sure that no errors have crept in at that stage, and your manuscript is published. So that is why it takes a long time. As I said, on an average, anywhere between 6 months to 2 years, but don't lose heart. And be wary of journals that promise to short circuit this process. Be wary of journals that tell you that, okay, you submit it to our journal and we'll publish within a week's time. That's a predatory journal. We'll come to that later on. So remember that it is going to take time, and you can't short circuit this process by submitting your paper to multiple journals simultaneously. That is a definite no. Do not submit your paper to multiple journals simultaneously. In fact, many journals require an undertaking from you, saying that at the time of submission, this is not under consideration with any other journal. And sometimes it has happened in the past that the author sent papers to multiple journals. Unfortunately for the author, 2 or 3 journals chose the same reviewer, and the reviewer got submissions from different journals for the same paper. The author was blacklisted. What you can do is to go in for what I call parallel processing. What I mean by parallel processing is that at any point in your career, you should aim at having multiple manuscripts at different stages of their publication. So which means that, let's say that right now you are putting final touches to the revised version of your paper, which you had submitted quite some time back. So it was reviewed, you received the comments, you revised your paper, and you are submitting it, your revised version with final touches. That was the manuscript you had submitted quite some time back, maybe 8 months, maybe a year ago. Then you should also have another manuscript which has come back from the journal, and you are looking at the reviewer's comments. That's your second manuscript. Then there could be another manuscript which is now almost ready for submission. So you have chosen the journal, you have put the final touches to bring it in line with that journal's requirements, and you are about to upload it. Then there could be a fourth one which you are actually engaged in writing. That is what I mean by parallel processing. So don't wait until your research is complete before you start writing. Start writing early. For instance, the method section, and we'll come to that in a minute. Method section you can write as you are conducting your research. You don't have to wait until the research is complete before starting the method section. In fact, ideally, method section should be written concurrently as you are working on it, because all the details will be available to you, will be fresh in your mind, and do that. Neither should you wait indefinitely. You don't go on waiting. You don't think that you will be annoying the editor by sending reminders, provided you do it politely and provided you do it after a reasonable length of time. So 6 to 8 weeks is a good enough time. Because after all, as I said, you have put in all the work at this up to this stage. You conducted the research, you collected the data, you analyzed it, you wrote it up. So it's all your work. You have just submitted to the editor for consideration. So don't be shy about this. Provided you do it politely, provided you, as I said, wait for a decent length of time, yes, by all means, you should inquire. You need to know what is happening to your paper. And as a general tip, I would say that other things being equal, prefer journals that are published more frequently. Once a week, once every 2 weeks, once a month, at least 6 times a year. Why? Because these journals, because they are published more frequently, their processing is far more streamlined. It's efficient because they have been at it and they have fairly tight deadlines. Against these are journals that are published maybe 2 or 3 or 4 times a year. So they tend to be, a bit slack, quite laid back. You may not have that time. So as I said, not that you should eliminate these journals, but if you're given a choice, prefer journals, because even if they want to say no to you, they will say it quickly. Whereas other journals may take even so long, and finally they would say, look, no, we are not publishing your paper. So be wary of that. So as I said, what are the things that are checked in the qualifying round? Now remember that qualifying round, their purpose is to decide whether your manuscript is worth reviewing, which means it is reviewed by people at this stage who are not necessarily experts on the topic of your paper. In fact, that is why they need reviewers. But they have a broad understanding of the overall field, and they are looking for specific faults in your manuscript, or they're looking for its merits. Now remember also that you want to publish in high impact factor journals. Yes, but high impact factor journals also have very high rejection rates. They are simply looking for ways to say no, because they get so many manuscripts and they don't want to invest so much time in examining each manuscript. So for instance, if they are just casually leafing through your submission and they find obvious errors of spelling, grammar, and punctuation, then that is enough for them. They will say, sorry, we are returning your paper. Or they would look at the references and find that references are not in the style that the journal wants. Fine, that is enough for them. They have not invested any time. They don't require any subject knowledge to do this. So your paper can be rejected. So again, there are 6 common things that they check for. About all these, there's not much we can do, but you can do by appropriately formatting your paper for that journal. So I'll keep this will be a sort of mantra in this presentation. Prepare your paper just the way the journal wants it. But what does that mean? And journals, as I said, can be quite picky. Now, this is in fact from a Canadian journal. So it's saying upfront that we expect fairly high proficiency in language, native language level. And if you don't have it, and if their manuscripts don't meet the standards, no review. Or there's a editor who has gone on the record saying that we must follow instruction to authors. Why? Journals have the reasons. You may not agree with all these recommendations. You may find them trivial. You may find them too irritating, annoying, but it is in your interest. Remember, you are in competition. You are competing for the journal space. Just as you want to get published in a good journal, so do hundreds of others. So, and just to give you an example, now, last session we discussed this, the sizing of the labels on the panels and so on. So you see, even for such simple thing, the journals have very specific requirements. Use capital letters for labels. So figure 2 A, B, C, D, those A, B, C, D must be capital letters, not lowercase letters. Now there's nothing right or wrong. I mean, either will serve the purpose, but this journal wants capital letters, so you must use capital letters. Those of you who are familiar with this p-values, probability values, then this particular journal says that it should be italic p with 0 before the decimal point, because there are other journals who maintain that because their value can never be 1, you don't need that decimal point. That journals. Figure captions, we mentioned figure captions. So here they are explicit. You must abbreviate the word figure to FIG. Then there should be a number that should be in bold, and there should be no punctuation at the end of the caption. So these are totally trivial. This has nothing to do with what the figure is all about. But these are the journal's requirements, and you must comply with them. The advantage is that the editor gets a sense that you have prepared your paper exactly for that journal in mind, which means it's not some recycled stuff. It may be recycled. Maybe your paper was rejected by one journal and you are submitting it to the next journal. But because you have taken care to format it for that particular journal, you have an edge. So don't neglect this. Submitting a paper is like applying a job. When you apply for a job, you put a cover letter, then you have your CV. So the job of the cover letter is to get the HR person to look at your CV. The job of the CV is to get your call for the interview. So it's like that. You prepare a cover letter to get the editor interested in your paper, to get them to look at your paper. So how do you write cover letters? One is, as far as possible, address it by name. Do your homework, find out who exactly is the appropriate person and address it by name. Dear Dr. Johnson, dear Dr. Deshpande, whatever. Only as a last resort, you would say, dear editor. Don't copy the abstract of your paper and paste it in your cover letter. Abstract is still too long for a cover letter. It is all right for a research paper, but cover letter should be much briefer than that. So there are two things that you can do in cover letter that will immediately get the editor interested. One is if you can possibly establish a link between your paper and something that the journal has already published in recent past, maybe in the past couple of years. And you should mention that link in the cover letter by quoting the reference and other details. So which means you are saying that your work builds on something that the journal has already published. So what it implies is that because the journal has published earlier topics, is you must accurately identify your paper hopes to fill or the problem to which your paper offers a solution. In 2 or 3 lines, that is what you must mention in your covering letter. It is also nice to mention in the cover letter 2 things, whether it's a particular category, because journal have different sections or departments, full length research papers, short communications, letters to the editor, and so on. So you should clearly mention that you are submitting under particular category. And if you can, mention why you would like to submit to that particular journal. You may or may not do it, but it's nice to do it. So do that. That's your covering letter. Then the title and the abstract of your paper, you must prepare them very, very carefully. Of course, the whole paper must be prepared with care, but the title and the abstract receive the maximum readers. So you must put extra care in that. Likewise, first paragraphs of introduction, discussion, and so on, because these are again scrutinized more carefully than the rest of the paper at the preliminary ground. So take care to see that, spelling, grammar, punctuation, journal format, references, everything is in right order. So for instance, here's a cover letter by name. So you mention the name of the journal and you mention the title of your paper, your manuscript. This is the link. This is what I meant. If you can establish some connection between what the journal has already published and you give the details, authors, year, volume number, whatever. And then here you are giving some reasons. By publishing this study in this, we hope to whatever, do all this. So this is sort of covering letter that you should write. Do not, as I said, copy the abstract of your paper and paste it in cover letter. It's an easy thing to do, but it's not going to take you far. So as I said, obvious errors of spelling, grammar, punctuation, you should avoid. Here, just a sample. Now you see, it's a simple thing here. What is provided here? A detailed description, nomenclatural notes, and a photo plate. So 3 things. If 3 things are being provided, why is the verb is? It has to be are. There has to be a match between the subject and a verb. It's a simple thing. Again, analysis, that's clearly a plural, such as descriptive statistics, mean values. Then why say was performed? No, were performed. Simple things. Now, why is this comma there? It is actually obstructing the flow of the sentence. The comma is totally out of place here. Likewise, this comma, it has no business to be there. Plus, the confers, it needs a preposition, confers on them. So errors of grammar, punctuation, spelling, use of articles, use of prepositions. So you should eliminate as far as possible these simple errors, because you are going to prejudice your reviewers by that. And as I said, don't give up. Maybe your paper will be rejected by the first journal to which you submit it, but there's always another journal. You can take solace from these statistics. So you can see more than 2/3 of the paper were eventually published somewhere. You need to persist. As I said, all your work is almost done. So don't throw it away. And if it's any consolation, here's an article that lists papers that were initially rejected, although later on it won the Nobel Prize for. So now we'll come to the body of the paper. So title, affiliation, abstract, keywords, introduction, methods, results, discussion. References we have already dealt with. Again, your target journal is the best source. What kind of titles the journal uses? Some journals use short titles, some journals use long titles, some journals use titles and subtitles. Some journals encourage titles in the form of complete sentence. Some journals discourage titles in the form of complete sentence. As far as possible, make your titles informative. They don't have to be catchy. See, after all, where are people looking at the title of your paper? In the table of contents. Now, why are they looking at table of contents of that journal? They are doing so because they're interested in that subject. So that part is already over. It's not like you are visiting a bookshop. You are not looking for any particular book. So if the title looks interesting, you will pick it up. No, a research paper is a different genre of writing. So it should be informative. And even the very first word of your title should be a significant word. Should not be a word like study or survey or experiment. Of course, it is all that, but let it not be the first word of your title. First word should be an important technical term of your paper. How long or how short the title should be? Well, the one study showed that typically it will be, somewhere between 7 to 13 words, but it's just a rule of thumb. After all this, let's say you have arrived at the wording of your title, but how will you actually format the title? So capitalization, alignment, weight, again, there's a wide choice. Here's a sampler. This is a very simple, basic formatting. Nothing is in bold, nothing is in capitals unless it is required, and it is left aligned. That's a normal thing. In this case, it is like the above, but it is in bold. Everything is in bold. It's capitalized as per the normal style. It is left aligned, but it is in bold. Whereas here, it's like the two above, but the alignment is centered. Again, there is nothing right or wrong. This is a journal style, but you should follow the journal style. Here, you see the case has changed, what we call the title case. So every significant word is capitalized. So C in chloramphenicol, O in overwhelming, A in approach, O in ocular, D in delivery has been all capitalized. That is a title case. Whereas these first three examples are what we call sentence case. Capitalization only when essential. But here it was left aligned, here it was centered. So all kinds of things. Here it is right aligned. Here everything is in capital letters. So all these things are possible. And there's nothing right or wrong. It has nothing to do with the actual title. It's just the formatting. But follow the journal's style. How do you indicate affiliation? So after the title comes affiliation. So you have multiple authors coming from different institutions. Totally trivial. Some journals use numbers as here. So different authors, different affiliations, signaled by numbers. Some journals would use letters of the alphabet, here in square brackets, superscripts. Nothing right or wrong. It's different journal style, and you should follow your target journal. So that's the titles. Then the abstract will come to how do you write the abstract? Because many people will read the abstract. Of course, most people will read the title. A proportion of them will read the abstract. Even a smaller fraction of them may read the paper. The most common fault that I observe in abstracts of the papers that I edit is that they begin by repeating the information that is already provided by the title. Don't do that. Title and abstract always go together. Do not repeat in the body of the abstract what the reader can gain by reading the title. I'll give you examples of this. Again, abstracts are for most essential information. You don't need background information. That is part of the introduction. You don't even need to specify objectives. If you are giving your findings, people will know what your objectives must have been. They can reverse engineer that. As far as possible, abstract should make complete sense on its own. That's why it doesn't contain any references. It doesn't contain any mention of figures and tables. So again, it's a good idea not to use too many abbreviations unless those are standard in your field. Otherwise, not a good idea to use. Abstract, keep within the limits specified by the journal. Some journals say 250 words, some journals say 300 words, some journals say 100 words. Follow that. Some journals will want a single paragraph as an abstract. Some journals will want headings, what we call structured abstract. So whatever the journal wants, just supply that. So here's an example. This is the title of the paper. If this is the title of the paper, what have you gained by reading the first line of the abstract? It's the same thing. Keywords also. I will come to keywords in a minute. So likewise, if this is the title, what's the abstract? The same thing. Likewise, background information. Now, this is the title, and you see the abstract. Only after 5 or 6 lines, the author comes to a point. This study deals with. So why all this preliminary thing in an abstract? Abstract focus on the essentials. So again, this is the title. If this is the title, again, you don't need this introduction. This paper provides a holistic view. That is where the contribution of this paper comes into action. So don't do that. Just to give you an extreme example of what I mean when I say title and abstract work together. This is the title. It's the title of an actual published paper in the Journal of Physics. Longest title in the form of a question. The abstract, only 2 words, but it complements the title. So abstract and the title go together. Of course, it's an extreme example, but just to drive home my point. Even 2 words are 1 word too many. Just 1 word abstract. Then comes some keywords. Now, again, many times I find that authors don't apply their mind when they're choosing keywords. They simply consider it as a chore, as a formality by the journal. Oh, we must supply some keywords. So the first thing that comes to their mind, they will supply as keywords. But remember that appropriate keywords will increase the chances of your paper coming to the attention of people who are looking for information on that topic. So you must exercise your mind. Just as I said, avoid in the abstract information that is already given by the title. The same way, avoid as keywords terms that are already used in the title, because terms that are used in the title are going to be indexed automatically. Title keywords is your additional terms that you are supplying, maybe synonyms of some word that you have chosen in the title, maybe phrases. Also remember that although it's keyword, it doesn't have to be one word. In fact, one word is rarely satisfactory. Go in for 2 or 3 word combination phrases that will make it more specific, because most of it I find that keywords are too broad, too general. No, they're keywords. They must land the searcher. They must point the searcher to your paper. So put yourself in the mind of those who are looking for information that your paper provides and figure out what is it that they would use. And as with the title, format keywords exactly the way the journal wants. Journals don't even agree whether it should be keyword as one word or 2 words. Some journals use 2 words, some journals use 1 word. Some journals arrange them alphabetically. Some journals arrange them in whatever order author considers appropriate. Punctuation, capitalization, all trivial details matter. So here's, for example, what are all these keywords? They're already there in the title. And some of them are simply too broad. Quality. Three words even, but they are more specific. These are the kind of keywords that you should be aiming at. Abbreviations, no, they don't work well as keywords. See, this is the title, and okay, AQI's air quality index, that is what the author had in mind. So he used AQ as a keyword, but it could be something else. So abbreviations generally don't make good keywords. So we have talked about the preliminary things like the title, affiliation, abstract, keywords. Now we come to the body of the paper. So typically we follow this what's called IMRAD structure. IMRAD is an acronym. I for introduction, which sets the scene. M for materials and methods, results and discussion. So you can think of each section as an answer to a different question. So while this is what we mean by IMRAD structure, when actually you sit down to write your paper, don't say to yourself that I'm going to write a research paper. That's a very vague description of what you actually have to do. Say to yourself that I'm going to write an account of my work, an account of my research in 25 to 30 paragraphs, structured as follows: introduction, methods, results, discussion. So this is a broad framework, but it is far more concrete. It's far more precise. Not that it is cast in stone. I mean, your introduction can be 500 words. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is this will give you a general picture based on an analysis of thousands of research papers. So this is actually what you want to come up, you need to come up with when you write a research paper. So you should set the scene in an introduction, describe what you did, describe what you found in the results section, and say how it matters. So let's take one by one. So how do you write the introduction? As I said, each one is an answer to a different question. So introduction answers the question why. Why did you do this experiment? Why did you choose this method? How is it different from what others have done, and so on? So you need to state the problem. You need to tell readers what is it that you focused on and why. So you need to, ideally, it makes good sense to produce some statistics, just some numbers to show why your problem needs to be solved. It can save so much money, it can save so much time, it can save lives, whatever. So bring in some data. Then your thesis may have a chapter review of literature, but typically research papers, at least in the sciences, don't have a heading review of literature. That is expected to be a part of the introduction. So in the introduction, you also touch upon how others have approached it and how your paper is different from that. That's important, because journal editors are looking for originality. They are looking for novel contribution. What is new? So introduction is your chance to highlight that others did this, but I did something different. The structure of the introduction is like a funnel. It broad at the top and it goes on narrowing it down until you end it with a statement of specific objectives of your paper. What did your research hope to solve? What problems? Methods, another thing, how. So you know why, but now you tell us how. So if somebody else wants to repeat that, you must give enough details. Not that they will do it, they may or may not do it, but this is like an implicit guarantee that, look, I'm not holding it back. This is what I did, and I'm going to tell you what I found. If you don't believe me, or if you want to try it for yourself, that's fine, be my guest. I'm giving you all the details that's necessary for you to repeat this experiment if you wish. So all these details, of course, they will vary from case to case, but these are some of the things that may occur to you. So how did you choose the sample? What was the sample size? What statistical test did you use? All this should form a part of the method section. Now, if there's a standard method, you don't have to describe it, just a reference is enough. But if you have changed it in some way, just list what were the changes, where you departed from the standard method. If you receive something free of cost, better to mention that. Sometimes it can lead to conflict of interest. As I said, sample size, sampling method, how many replications, what was the control? Typically, you are comparing your approach with something else. So how did you do that? What's your control group? In terms of writing, just use the past tense. That's fine, because you are describing something that has already happened. So the past tense will stand you in good stead. So these are the kind of details that you need to mention in methods. Just an example. So, okay, you use this Elementor analyzer, that's the instrument, but who were the makers? Okay, Leco Corporation. What was the model? CHN268. We measured the height, but that's not enough. How exactly did you measure the height of the subjects? So we measured it to the nearest millimeter, blah, 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 whatever. So these are the details that must be mentioned in the method section. Method section also you can write in the past, because that's how it is. Result section, what did you find? Okay, we know why, we know how. Now you tell us, what did you find? So this will be a very objective part of your paper. Just the facts, just the numbers, just the data, which you can present it using tables or charts. But the same data in the same paper, you can't present it once as a table and once as a chart. It's up to you to make up your mind. For instance, if exact values are important, then tables are better. If your numbers are telling a story, then maybe a chart will be a better idea, and so on. So you do that. If you have done statistical analysis and if you find that they are not significantly different, no point in discussing them. We have already touched upon this. You must follow the right standards, exact SI system, notation, all that we covered yesterday. That's important. If you are giving a table, mention it in the body of the text and just give one or two key findings, not all the data that's there in the table. Don't paraphrase it in the text. Now, these days, because we have hypertext and we have electronic publication, you can use supplementary tables which won't form a part of the paper as published, but accessible to readers if they wish. And like method section, write the results in the past tense. I found this, I found that, whatever. And the last part is the discussion, which is the toughest part to write because it has to answer the question, so what? Okay, we know what you found. So how does it matter? What are its implications? What does it convey? Is it in line with what you would have expected? If it's different, why is it different? How do you explain that? How does it extend what we already know? Now, remember, you made a promise when you ended the introduction section. So this is your opportunity to make good that promise, to deliver. So you set about to find something. So you say, yes, this is what I found, and this is what it implies. This is what it means. You can also suggest future line of work and so on. You can offer a conclusion. Now, don't write like these are remarkable results or these are interesting results. No, let the readers be judge of that. You could say they are noteworthy maybe, but not remarkable or interesting. That's left to the readers. The tense, I mentioned that typically methods and results are written in the past tense, but discussion requires a mix of tenses. You may use the past tense when you are referring to a specific result obtained by a particular research or research group. You could use the present tense when you are talking about a general truth, sun rises in the east. Or you can speculate, you can use the future tense. You're not tied to any particular tense. So here's an example. This is the title of the study. So these are the kind of things that you expect to find in the discussion section, phrases or words. You know, exclamation for this, other studies, R value. So you're comparing your results with what others found. Consequently, yet. So it shouldn't be simply a repetition of what you're saying in the results section. No, assume that the reader has noted the results. Here, you have to tell them what the results mean and how do they compare with what others have found. So that's the body of your paper. References we have already touched upon. Now I keep mentioning these finishing touches. These are small little things. In the last round, you can take care of these simple things like whether the journal prefers to spell out figure F-I-G-U-R-E or it puts the abbreviated word, whether it numbers its headings. You know, how do you, this is again something common that I've noticed, you know, because abbreviation is printed in capital letters, it doesn't mean that when you're spelling it out, you retain the capitals. No, most of the time they are not proper nouns. They are not names of people. They are not names of person, places. No, just use the lowercase. Not like that. Falling weight, deflectometer, no reason why they should be in capitals. Now, broadly, yes, you will follow journals format, but as I said, many journals are printed in multiple columns, but that doesn't mean you should format your paper in multiple columns. No, just one column. Most journals follow full justification. Your file, left justification. You don't have to identify what the font the journal is using. But I will say don't be tied down to Times New Roman. You know, in fact, Microsoft Word itself moved from Times New Roman to Calibri several years ago. We have better fonts because most of your reading is going to be on screen. So I would strongly recommend these fonts. They look good on screen. They're easier on the eyes. So, and they're standard. So nobody's going to say that you must use Times New Roman. Times New Roman. The journal can use whatever font it likes when it prints your paper, but your manuscript, make it easy for you, for others. When you want to start a new page, don't go on pressing enter. Choose insert, break, and things like that. So as I said, different journals follow different style. This journal not only spells it out in full, but also prints in italics. So if your target journal does that, you do that. If it abbreviates, you abbreviate. Numbered headings. Some journals use numbers. So these are numbers with a dot after each number. See? Some journals will use numbers, but they won't put a dot. Some journals won't use dots, neither dots nor numbers. So there's no question, no numbers at all, just typographic coding. So whatever journal, your target journal does, you do that. See, main headings are in entirely capital letters. Second level headings are in lowercase. So do that. So this was all about how do you prepare. And as I said, we started with discussing how do you choose the right journal. But I also want to warn you that you don't choose a wrong journal. Don't fall prey to predatory journal. Because you are under so much pressure to publish, there are companies, journals that take advantage of this fact. How do you need to know, how do you spot a predatory journal? How do you find that it's a scam? Simple things. Like no reputable journal will ever write to you asking you to submit papers to that journal. You know, reputable journals get lots of submissions. They don't have to write to authors inviting contributions. So the moment you get a mail, be warned. On a website, if the journal displays its ISSN very prominently, International Standard Serial Number, that's again a warning bell. There's nothing to be proud of. ISSN is just a number. That standard has nothing to do with quality. Likewise, you know, Google Scholar, Index Copernicus, there are no compliments to the journals. They will index everything. These journals, as I mentioned earlier, they will say that, look, we'll publish your papers very quickly. Why? Because there's no value addition. They don't edit your paper. They don't have it reviewed. Typically, they will have huge editorial boards. Every continent will be represented. And they will be rather coy of revealing where exactly they operate. I'll show you specific examples of that. They will even claim an impact factor. This journal has an impact factor of 2.123, whatever. Don't go by that. Check. And typically, they publish everything under the sun. So these are some telltale marks of predatory journals. You know, this is the kind of schedules that they promise. You know, how do you do that? It's absurd. So these sort of things should set up warning bells in your mind. You know, now UGC, University Grants Commission, has taken a strict view of predatory journals. Publishing predatory journals will count against your institute. It will count against you. You need to know. For instance, I will just give you an example. There's this European Journal of Nutrition and Food Safety. So, okay, so I looked up the website. That's funny. If it's a European journal, then why is it giving these charges in Indian rupees and US dollars? You would have expected it to be in euros. Simple things. Where is it published from? It's published from West Bengal. Why is it European journal? I mean, there's nothing illegal about it. You can name anything that you like, but it's a fraudulent journal. So it wants you to believe that it's a reputable journal. It's anything but. So here you see ISSN very prominently displayed. Contact us. Now you see this address? It's phony. Because if you know anything about British postal codes, you will know straight away that if it's London, it can't be SL4 and SF, because London postcodes are compass points. EC1, East Central 1. WC2, West Central 2, that is London's postcode. If it's in Berkshire, how is it that it's in London? Impact factor 3.108. Does it really have an impact factor? ISSN also prominently displayed. See the address that is given. I mean, can you locate this journal based on this address? ISSN, the agency that assigns this international standard serial number, it goes on record saying that it has nothing to do with quality or validity. Don't go by that. So there's a journal that claimed to have an ISO standard. So I was wondering, I said, I had not heard of any ISO certification from a journal. So I examined it. It turned out that this ISO refers to how ISSN should be displayed. That's the ISO standard. And that was not even up to date. The journal was quoting some. So these are just, ways of taking you for a ride. I said that impact factor needs to be verified. Fortunately, you can do that easily if you know MJL, Master Journal List. Clarivate is the company that assigns impact factor, that publishes journal citation reports. So go to that web page. It's free. Type the name of the journal in the search box about which you have a doubt. So I typed this International Journal of Library Information Studies. And when I clicked that, this is what I found. So there was no match for this. The site simply asked me, did you mean this journal? So this journal had an impact factor, but this journal didn't have, but it had claimed to have an impact factor. So don't go by that. Likewise, these fake issues, special issues, publishers have been taken for a ride by this. There's a whole Nature article on that. So that was about predatory journals. You also need to be aware that you should not be accused of plagiarism. So plagiarism is borrowing text but not acknowledging it. So if you do that, as I said, put it in quotation marks, give the citation, then you cannot be accused of plagiarization. And as far as possible, use your words, paraphrase. Now there is some help available. For instance, there's a phrase bank, depending on which section you are writing about. So you can go to that and it will suggest, alternative expressions. So if your original says caused by, you can say resulting from. So you can beat the similarity check. Now there is some information how much your own text you can use. So I'm simply giving you a good reference. You can check that. Some journals accept it. Yes, you can use your own text. Ludwig Guru is another one which you can type a sentence, it will paraphrase it for you. Although need to be careful. These are the kind of paraphrasing that has been done robotically. Cloud computing. Why should anyone change it to haze figuring? Signal to noise, flag to commotion. This is machine translation. So be careful of that. So just to wind up this part of it, here are lots of resources for you. Many publishers, whether it's Taylor and Francis, Wiley, Springer, they all have a lot of information to help authors. Springer has an academy, Elsevier has an academy. Then lots of Editage Insights, the private company, publishes a lot of good stuff on writing manuscripts, Wiley, and there are a good number of books. This is a systematic plan to write an article. So all these are good sources. As I said, I have given you the bibliographic details. So see, there are fairly recent publications. So that's why I said I wondered why your formatting guidelines found most recent as 2008. So that was, as I said, one part of my paper, but there's the art. So how do you write? So I want to touch upon that. I will take a little more time. So how do you check your writing? So you can try this exercise. You can go to this website. paste sample of your writing. Now, what it does, it gives you the report as though it's a medical report. If you go undergo a medical examination, you get some. So essentially what you do is you paste this and run the test. So it will give you this kind of report. So maybe your prose is really good, lean, fat-free prose, fit and trim, excellent condition. Of course, it has some kind of algorithm. It's based on many other things. Proportion of abstract nouns, match between subject and verb, and so on. Or it may tell you that no, you need to little bit of work on your writing, or no, you are not in good shape, or it's too bad. So you can try it for yourself. Good writing is always specific writing. I mentioned to you yesterday when we talked about presentations. You have to be specific. Things like large number of people were present. No, what does that mean? By bringing numbers, by changing the verb from something bland like were present, pack the room. That carries a punch. Add a bit of urea. Now, what's that? This is an example taken from published sources. Now you see, this is from one book. And this is from an award-winning book. You see the difference? Notion is the same. But what you learn from the second version, because this is from Siddharth Mukherjee's Emperor of Maladies on cancer. So you know what a task it was, because 400 tons and you get just 100 milligrams. Abbreviations, I keep telling you, it's an obstacle. IIT, not always Indian Institute of Technology. Could be something else. So be careful with abbreviations. So how do you actually tackle writing? You have a report to write, you have a research paper to write. How do you do this? We go on postponing. So instead, what you should do is see whether you can write in 25 words. Imagine you are writing on a postcard. What will you write? Then build on it. So don't start writing the whole paper to begin with. Then you make an outline. So have the headings, subheadings, subheadings, whatever. And you can, as I said, you can start the method section even early on. Give yourself a target in number of words, not in terms of time. Don't say that, okay, next 3 hours, I'm going to work on writing. No, 3 hours will pass even if you don't write anything. Say, I am not going to get up unless I have 400 words, 600 words, whatever. In the first draft, just go on writing. Don't worry about all the minutiae, that those are finishing touches. They come later. So while some of it you can do in odd bits of time, when it comes to putting the flesh on the skeleton, you require uninterrupted time, large blocks of time. That's what is needed. You can leave off even mid-sentence. So when you come back to it, you will find it easier to resume. That's one tip. Remember that the kind of writing you are required to do, you are not going to be a professional writer. You are going to be a technologist, an engineer, whosoever. But writing is going to be a part of your job, and you can become a competent writer as you can become a competent driver, a competent swimmer. Competency, I'm not talking of real professional writing. So it's an acquired skill, and you acquire it like you acquire any other skill. Learning to play a musical instrument, learning how to drive a car, learning to operate a sophisticated instrument. How do you do it? You do it by progressing. So if you're learning how to swim, you start at the shallow end. You learn your breathing, you learn your legs movement. Then you get into the deep with something tied to your back to keep you afloat. Then you increase your stamina. So the same thing applies to writing. It's a skill You put in the efforts, you will be rewarded. So for instance, try this. Every day for the next 30 days, write 10 sentences a day. The only thing is, shouldn't be too short and shouldn't be a repetition of a pattern. Don't say that today I read a book, the title of the book was XYZ. Then yesterday I read a book, the title of the book was ABC. No, change the pattern. Next 30 days, bring in coherence, all sentences on one topic, and so on. Even if you don't want to do any of this, read. Now, if you want to force yourself to write, this is, what a writer recommends. Set a timer. See the step number 4. So the idea is you're forcing yourself to write. But the best way to learn to write better is to read. Extensive reading. But what you should read? Not newspapers, not magazines, not your textbooks, not journals. I mean, journals, of course, but that is to improve your knowledge. If you want to read to improve the quality of your writing, then you must have better models. So here I just want to throw some numbers at you. So if you want to increase your vocabulary, if you want to achieve the proficiency of near native, yes, a lot of investment. So here's something to start with, Oxford Bookworms. So what you do is you go to this website, pick a stage, maybe, pick stage 4 or maybe stage 3, whatever. So you will be given a simple test, 2 tests, in fact. So it's a basically comprehension test, like, here you're given a choice. So you take the test. At the end of the test, it will tell you either you chose the right level or you were too ambitious in choosing your level. So maybe you should go to a lower level, or it may tell you that, no, you chose an easy level. You are better than that. Go to the next level. So try this for yourself. There's another good website. It's forcing you to write. So essentially it gives you a topic. It gives you some pointers to what you could write. And then you start the clock and you have to write between 140 to 190 words. Just go on writing. It will keep tab of the word count. 141 words entered. And then you click check, it will tell you how you write, how good your writing was. But the idea is it's an exercise. It's forcing you to write. Then there are some good checkers. So Trinka is one of them. I'm not really a great fan of Grammarly. It shows too many false positives. You can take courses in writing. Coursera, some of you may know it. So yes, there are courses on writing. This whole series from Oxford University Press is a very good series for the series is VSI. You have many books, hundreds of subjects, short books. Or, Royal Society, every year it has been awarding, giving a prize for the best written book for the general public. It has been doing it since 1988. So the books that have been shortlisted or they won the prize are again good models for writing. So this year the prize went to Sheldrake's books. You see, all kinds of subjects are covered. So these are the kind of books you should be reading. It has a US counterpart is Penn E.O. Wilson Award. So by reading these books, you will become a better writer, but you need to put in that investment. American Chemical Society, of course, this is not available on individual, but maybe IIT Kanpur would think of taking out a subscription. It's a very good source. Caroline Norris offers a course on academic writing, and her textbook is free download. It's a very useful book. So there are again good sources, lots of books. But as I said, you need to work on it. No one's going to throw it in your lap. So work on your writing. This is a compilation of the best of best. So every year they used to choose the best written scientific articles for the general public, technical articles. When the series completed 10 years, they published the best of the best. Likewise, Dawkins's selection from good quality writing. So as I said, these are more recent publications. Refer to them, pick up a book that you like, work on it. It's a skill you can acquire with practice, but you will need to work on it. So any of these books, but you need to write it. You can't say that, I want to learn swimming, but unless I'm perfect, I won't get into water. It's not going to work. Articles, prepositions, yes, we often make mistakes, but by reading a lot, you will automatically get rid of these mistakes. So that's my farewell to you. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I will stop sharing. If you have any questions, you're welcome.
Thank you, sir. It was a really eye-opening presentation and a lot to learn from what you have just told us. There are a few queries still lingering in my mind regarding
Yeah, go ahead.
The one question I need to ask about is when you were defining that that was IMRAD scheme, what did the A stand for, and if whether that
no. A is just to make it a pronounceable acronym. Okay, that's why it is in lowercase.
And so, whether that is scope of future work should come after conclusion or in the discussion itself, and sometimes there is a one part called as research gap or limitation of the research work which you had done, whether it should be mentioned in conclusion part or in the discussion part itself.
No, research gap should be mentioned probably in the introduction, because that is the gap you are hoping to fill.
But no, more exactly the limitation of your study.
That will be part of the discussion. Again, the best guide is your target journal. See how the target journal handles these and follow that. Because some journals, for instance, combine even the results and discussion in one section. Some journals keep it separate. Some journals provide a separate heading conclusions. So again, that.
Okay. Another thing that in case someone is not sure or aware of the topmost journals in the field in which he is trying to submit his paper, or he's trying to submit research paper in particularly to some research journal. So can he register himself in some of the top publications website, and they themselves then decide that based on the content of your abstract and the topic, which journal, whatever they recommend, you should send to them, rather than making a list yourself of all the top journals and then selectively picking out based on the acceptance rate or the recent topic.
So what you're saying is that you should give them material in advance. There is, and then
rather than searching each journal separately, one can go to publication house website themselves, and from there they themselves
no, at least I'm not aware of any such service that,
because Taylor and Francis, as you mentioned, they provide an option of making registering and making an account for for an author, and I haven't gone to the second step where they can also recommend that what are the top journals in that particular based on the title and abstract of your research paper, where you can send your
so what I'm saying is, after all, when you have written the title and the abstract of your paper, it will take you not more than half an hour. You can go to all these websites and pick which are the good journals. Even if you type in Google search box top journals in, say, electrical engineering, it will give you a list. What are the top journals?
And in case your paper is being published or in the transition process for revision or being reviewed, someone else submits a similar work and to another some journal, and while your work is being reviewed, his paper gets published in the meantime. So that will be a disaster
Too
for you
bad.
because
But how do you prevent it? That's a
okay.
fact of life. You have to understand that.
So there is one question in the chat box. How to complete a quality manuscript within 2 to 3 weeks? I have heard people complete their manuscript within a week.
Yeah. Well, I would say in the books that are recommended, there is one which, of course, it takes 12 weeks, but you can peruse that book, you will get an idea. I mean, you can compress it in 2 to 3 weeks also. But these people, I would think that they will probably start writing earlier. As I said, you don't have to wait until your research is complete. You can write the method section side by side as you are going. You can start filling in the results as they come in. You will save time by that. And what factors should I keep in mind before I submitting manuscript to a new journal for a manuscript that has been rejected? Well, as I said, sometimes the journals will reject it without giving you any feedback. Some journals will point out specific shortcomings in your manuscript. They will say, these are the shortcomings. Even if you remove them, we are not considering your journal. But this will be a good feedback for you to submit it to a next journal. So you are submitting to the other journal a better manuscript than what was submitted to the journal that rejected it. So don't simply reformat and submit it, but see if you can benefit from the reviewer's comments.
Sir, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I have 2, 3 very small questions. Can I start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Firstly, thank you very much. Probably this is the best weekend we had for such
Thank you so much.
2 sessions every day. And especially for me, who has a long gap between my academics. Now I'm a PhD student.
Okay.
Now, one thing which was really surprising in the morning first session, that our own guidelines are not making very clear things. That was really surprising for me. So not as a criticism to the institute, rather I would say that if you could pinpoint 2, 3 things which really became outdated, though in revising in 2019 and giving the reference of 9 itself is a decade difference.
Yes.
So first question.
See, in defense, I must say that after all, these guidelines were prepared by your professors who had obviously far more important things to attend to because they are specialists in their field. This must have been a job that was just maybe forced on them, and whatever they did, what they could. Ideally, I think you could outsource this.
Sir, if you recall my question, I said very clearly, not as a criticism to the
So
person
that's what I'm
who did
saying.
it.
Yeah, quite true. So
no,
yes,
I just want to know that we as a researcher who has to face the world of publishing, we should be abreast that if still I am writing 3 lines per inch, when that itself became a what you call Remington typing era, it looks very odd. That was one thing. So it's not immediate. I do not seek immediate answer, but I would request maybe I can email you at a later date.
Yeah, most welcome.
Point where these improvements, as an improvement, not as a criticism, could be done.
Quite true. Point
that
taken.
is one.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That is one. Second thing, sir, this is related to probably due to paucity of time, it could not be taken. That is related to plagiarism.
Right. Yeah. I was pressed for time. So
yeah, one of my professor is very punctual even in assignment, and I had a very tough time. My colleagues will be smiling to convince him that you accept my assignment. He says that if your assignment is more than 10% plagiarized, it is rejected. So submitting one assignment took us really Herculean task. So I would like to know that are there some specified guidelines when, like for example, I'm writing in finance. Now you write anything related to finance, in Indian context, it will be via regulatory, via ministry, via RBI, via some of the other financial intermediary. The very third sentence becomes plagiarized because
Okay, what I
somebody out
suggest
of
is, if you just don't mind my interrupting, if you can just email me, I will give you a link to an excellent article that deals with the very question that you are asking. That what is it that you should really be focusing on when you come up with similarity? Because there are some caveats. For instance, how do you run this? What are the parameters that you set? So it's a brief article, just one page, but you'll find it very useful.
Sure, sir. I'll definitely write it.
Sure.
Just I am posing, I do not require immediate answer. And third, very trivial question, it may sound that when we have multiple surname or what you call nick or pen name, how to cite, like George Orwell. Now, this is not the real name.
Yeah, okay. Understand.
Likewise, when you have Roy Chaudhary or Naidu Roy or Singh Yadav and all those things. Now, is there any means? I'm not saying accepted. What you call a practice being followed when you have multiple surnames, how to go with it, or every time ask the person itself?
No, that's not practical. That's why I said there are tools like, Google Scholar and so on. So what you could do is you can type the name and see how it has been treated in other published sources. So that is one simple way. The other thing you mentioned, now you take, for instance, Mark Twain. Now, Mark Twain is a famous author. Yes, but his real name was Samuel Longhorn Clements.
Correct.
But then we will only go by what appears in his published writings. So it will be still Twain M and not his real name. So you should follow whatever is given. Yeah.
And allow me for sending these two questions.
Oh, you're most welcome. Yeah, please do.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, plagiarism checking website. As I said, you can email me. There are, see, after all, even the regular websites, up to some extent, they do allow, like, a trial and whatever. But actually, my position on plagiarism is simple. Just don't do it. Do not copy blocks of text and paste it into your paper. I mean, otherwise, it is humanly impossible to write exactly as somebody else has written. So you will never be caught in similarity trap. That is one. But of course, I will also add a codicil that it also depends on the person who is conducting the similarity check. It's not a question of you submit the text, read the figure and say, okay, 15% similarity, so rejected. No, it has to be done case by case. The person who is doing the similarity checking needs to apply his or her mind. And that's where this article that I mentioned will be very useful.
There is another query. Is it a good idea to transfer a manuscript to a specified journal suggested by an editor?
Oh, yes, surely. Because the editor will have a pretty good idea of what the journal wants. So yes, so long as it's not a predatory journal, yeah, it is pretty safe. In fact, many mainstream publishers, whether it's Springer, whether it's Wiley, who publish hundreds of journals, they also have this option. At times, you can even enter that option when you are submitting the manuscript, that you are giving the publisher the license or the authority to transfer your submission to some other journal other than what you specified, if they consider that journal more appropriate. It's fine.
So there is one more question. How to approach a journal for mistakes in the final published paper, and what is done for the same? Is it reprinted or just corrections are reprinted?
It will depend on exactly what that error is. So suppose it's a simple trivial error in spelling or whatever, then nobody is really going to bother. If it's something significant that affects the interpretation of your results, then the journal will be published what they call erratum. So in some subsequent issue, they will publish this, that this is an erratum for such and such article for X read Y, whatever. If it's even more serious than that, only then they will go for retraction. There have been cases where journals chose to retract the papers that they have published. So it all depends on what is exactly the error or the mistake that you are referring to and how serious its consequences.
Sir, there is one more query, like what points should be considered when journal asks for resubmission?
Well, the journal itself would have specified what they are looking for when they're asking you to resubmit, because the reviewers will have raised certain concerns. So you need to address those concerns. Besides, the journal may point out that these are some things where your manuscript is prepared differently from, and so on. Yeah.
Hello, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Sir, I have one question. It's like if you work on you choose some area, then you publish things, then the different works will be related to that particular theme. Like
Right.
it
Yes.
will be coherent. So I face this issue like how to make the titles different in different journals, like different papers. Do you have any suggestions for that? Because I face this issue every time.
But see, if you're publishing, all right, you are publishing on a particular theme, on a particularly narrowly defined topic.
Yes.
But what your title should emphasize is how the content of the paper is different from the previously published paper. Because if it's not, it means you are, then it's some more of the thing that you are simply publishing more papers, but based on not so original content. So each title should emphasize what is different in that particular paper. I mean, that's the only thing I can say.
Okay. Okay, sir. Thank you.
So there is another question. What point should be considered when journals ask for resubmission, and how to address such point as co-author and not the leading author?
Well, as I said, it really depends on what the journal is asking you. If the journal is asking you to resubmit, the journal will have specified that, look, these are the points that strike us, and these are the lines on which we will like you to revise your article. So that is what you should follow. Now, about the order of authorship, again, it's a contentious issue. Now, some journals make it amply clear that you once submitted, the order of authors cannot be changed. Also, increasingly, publishers are going for its acronym credit. So they have some sort of system whereby you recognize and spell out the contribution of different authors. So who exactly did what, and they have standard descriptions and phrases. So if you just Google for credit taxonomy authors, you will get more information on that. So it's simply, essentially, it's a way of specifying the contribution of each author. So then the readers can decide for themselves what the contribution of each author was. But the exact sequence of authors, well, that is for the group of, that is for the authors as a group for to decide. The publishers will have no say in that.
One more thing. Can you suggest some good plagiarism checking websites that are without charges?
Yeah, I saw that. What I'm saying is that many of the even commercial plagiarism checkers offer you a sort of trial or free sync up to certain length. So you can use that. Or what you could do is pick up some key sentences from your paper, put them in double quotes and paste it in Google. So Google, if the identical sentences are found elsewhere, and because you have put double quotes around it, Google will search for that exact sentence. Then you can know whether there is a similarity. You don't need a specific checker for that.
Sir, I have a question. These days, especially in last 2 years, we have seen that a lot of papers have been retracted from esteemed institutes as well.
Yes.
So in near future, it might inhibit the collaborative work across the institutes. It might discourage. So could you suggest something to deal with those things? Because, like, for example, if inter-institute collaborations are there, so one institute is not being honest, but everybody on the paper will suffer in future once the paper gets retracted because of that, even if the other authors are not at the mistake, or like they're not aware of the things going on. So how can we deal such issues?
Okay, actually, I would see this as less of a possibility because most reputable journals follow what they call double-blind system. That means the reviewers do not know the identities of authors, let alone their affiliation. And of course, authors don't know the reviewers are. So the point that you are raising will come only when the affiliation is revealed. But the decision to accept or reject a paper, at least in theory, at least that's how it works, is not based on the affiliation. Though there have been published studies that yes, affiliation does matter, and there have been actual published studies that prestige affiliations have more chances of being published than non-prestige institutes. But what you are saying is unlikely to happen. I mean, that's my feeling, because the identity of the authors and their affiliation is not revealed to the reviewers. So they are unlikely to be biased simply because the affiliation mentions an institute that was involved in some kind of controversy.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
You have anything else?
Yes, sir. There are two more queries in the chat box. The first one is, if a paper is presented in a conference and awaited for publication in conference proceedings, can the revised or extended version of this paper be submitted to a journal for publishing? Any specific points to consider for such a scenario?
Yes, the most important point is you need to mention in your cover letter that it was presented at such and such conference and it is awaiting publication. Second thing is you need to establish or convince the editor of the journal that your paper will be much more revised or substantially different version from what is going to be published as conference proceedings, because nobody would like to duplicate publication. But simply because it has been presented at a conference does not automatically disqualify it from being considered by a journal. But you should be upfront about it. Say that this was the paper, and you can even attach the version that is going to be published. It may not have been published, but the version is there. So the editors themselves can take a call and compare your manuscript that you are submitting for consideration to that journal and the version of it that is likely to be published as a conference proceedings. Then it's their call.
Okay, sir. And another query is, in resubmission, will the editor treat it as a fresh submission or will be reviewed according to the past review comments only?
Oh, the journals actually, when they ask you to resubmit, they make it very clear. Either they will say that this will be considered as a fresh submission, which means it will probably go to some other reviewers, or it will say that, look, these are the concerns, and if you revise it, then we will take it forward. So the journal makes it amply clear whether it's going to be treated as a fresh submission or a step in the process.
Okay. And one last query, sir. This is from my side.
That's fine. Huh?
As you mentioned, like in the abstract, we should not mention the objective. Like,
yes, yeah, that's right. Yes.
But the objective is the thing which we communicate to the another, like the second person, like what's our thoughts, what we are going to do in this paper. So if we don't put that in that, so like how?
No, I said that. No, I said that if you are giving the findings, if you are giving the results,
okay,
that should really make it clear what the objectives must have been. That is what I was getting at.
Okay. Participants, do you have any more queries? I guess we don't have further queries, sir. Farin, you can conclude.
Yeah, that's
okay,
fine. All ages. Yeah.
Sir, I just want to thank you for sparing the time on the weekends and sharing the things that are very beneficial for us. And most of the time we tend to forget these things, or we don't pay attention to these things. And for sharing the variety of web resources where we can learn and read the books and improve our writing. So I would like to thank you. We are getting a very warm response from the people that they are getting benefit from it.
Oh, it was a privilege. It was a privilege as well as a pleasure. So thank you for giving me this opportunity. If presentations have been useful, that's more than enough for me.
Yes, a lot of students are requesting for the presentation. So
yeah,
I would
so
like
I
to
will
say,
share that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we will share this presentation to the audience with the in the mail. So we will after 1 or 2 days, we will share it.
Fine. So I'll send you in PDFs and you can.
Sure, sir.
do
Sure.
that. Sure.
And there is
Okay.
one more information for the participants. Guys, please stay tuned for further events in this organized by Research Wing, Academic and Career Council. And please get updates from your mails. Please check your mailbox time to time. And thank you, sir, for such a good presentation.
This week
Thank
we
you.
are celebrating as research conclave. So a lot of events are lined up. So please stay tuned with the mails.
Fine. All right then. Okay.
Thank you all.
Take care. All the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.